Good evening and welcome to our last Theology on Tap of the season. Teardrop. But it's okay, it's a short break, and then we'll be back in the spring, so no worries. Tonight we have with us Jan Banister, parishioner at St. Bees. Yes, some of you may already know her or have seen her somewhere, and maybe you're scratching your head. Why does that make you look familiar? Jan is involved in several different things in Bartholomew and many other things in the community in general. She notably is part of the YAM Group that helps lead us in worship musically from time to time at Mass. And then she also is a part of the Peace and Justice Committee. And in the larger Columbus area, she works at ITech. She's actually the program chair of environmental design. And the thing that you may not know about her is she has a lot of Sicilian ancestry. And she's very into researching that ancestry. So she's got some fun stories I'm sure she could share about some of her ancestors. But she'll introduce herself a little bit more. She said she has a lot of interesting connect the dots and zigzags all over her life's pattern. She'll tell you that. And she's actually going to lead us in her.
Okay, this prayer is titled a social justice prayer. Almighty and eternal God, may your grace enkindle in all of us the love for the many unfortunate people whom poverty and misery reduce to a condition of life unworthy of human beings. Arouse in the hearts of those who call you Father a hunger and thirst for social justice and for fraternal charity in deeds and in truth. Grant, O Lord, peace to souls, peace to families, peace to our country, and peace among nations. Amen.
So please welcome Jan.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for inviting me here. Maybe you didn't invite me, maybe Teresa did. I have not been to one of these, so I really don't know what the protocol is or how you handle these kinds of theology on tap things. But I prefer that it be a more casual conversation. I'm perfectly prepared to deliver a 2-hour lecture with a quiz afterwards, but I prefer that it be a conversation among us. I'm originally from, she was trying to elicit my biography over here, and it's really way too complicated, but I'm originally from Western New York, from the area of Buffalo. My Sicilian family lived in Jamestown. We were the only people who lived further than a block away from my grandparents, because really that should never have been allowed in the Sicilian family to live anywhere but with your grandparents and aunts and uncles or on the same block. So we lived about 75 miles away from a family who emigrated to this country in the late 1800s. My grandparents did, in the midst of very hard times. They had very hard times with their living. So their family sought a better life here in the United States and brought 5 of their 7 children to the United States to live and establish their families. And they flourished and had 7 children apiece. And I had 250,000 first cousins and all that kind of thing. So that is kind of what formed me. I mean, church and Catholicism and family and Sicilianism all was one big ball to me that I could not distinguish the difference growing up. My father's job took him to many places. I went to high school in Southern Ohio. I went to college outside of Chicago. I married a Colombian, a Columbus native, and fell in love with the Columbus community. So shortly after our first Seattle and just last week moved to Boston. So he's they're 26 and 23. I've been in gigging for God music ministries since I arrived in Columbus. It was not my idea. I had done a lot of that in Chicago. Decided I'd come down here to be under the radar and just go to mass. That didn't work out very well for me. Like immediately, somebody told Matt Sousa I was a perfect musician to play bass, and you know, I had about a month off, and that was about the end of that. That's a joy to me. It's I don't know. It's really hard to explain what that is. I am currently for the last several years. I've been with Ivy Tech as a part-time instructor running my own business. I'm an interior designer. Been with Ivy Tech between part-time and this full-time assignment about 18 years. And I've been there full-time about the past 4 or 5. And Katie, I caught you like with your mouth half full, but would you stand up?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, I didn't tell her I was doing this. This is the reason I teach. I get to go to work every day, and maybe in a small way, I mean, impact lives and try to, you know, impart something and try to create a culture in the classroom where people respect each other, help each other out, work in teams, collaborate, and get something done that they can't do alone, that they can do together. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah.
That's a fair assessment. Katie is one of my brightest stars, if not my brightest star. So she's doing absolutely right. So proud. Shameless advertisement. A couple of shameless advertisements before I start. On Saturday morning, we're doing a run walk benefit for Katie Wazalowski for scholarship. We started Ivy Tech at 8 o'clock. It's going to be freaking cold out. It's going to be freaking cold Saturday morning. Colder than it's been any day this week. But we are going to bundle up. And we're going to try to walk 5K. I'm not going to run 5K, I can tell you that. We're going to try to walk 5K. Come on out and support Katie if you wish. It's just kind of a labor of love done not by me, but by the students who attended with Katie once a year. My other shameless announcement is we're going to talk about Catholic social justice, the origins of Catholic social justice, what it is, how we put it into action. Well, action is coming. There is a huge meal that we host in December for family self-sufficiency, which is a great program for people in our community. We do a dinner for them once a year, and it's Saturday, December 14th. We do it at church. Take over the whole basement. We cook a meal. We bring Santa Claus in. We give them gift baskets. We do crafts. I need photographers. I need volunteers to just help serve about 150 or more people for that meal. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions about that, you can ask me. Okay, where do we start? Here? How much do you know about, I mean, I know that you know a lot about Catholic social justice. The thing that you may not be familiar with is the actual formal Catholic social justice themes and origins, where they come from, how they are handed down to us. Typical college professor fashion. This would be an activity that will be difficult to do in this setting. But this activity is available on the U.S. Catholic Bishop's website. It's a timeline activity. And it is a timeline of where some of the Catholic social justice themes have come from. And they date back into the 1800s. As far as modern Catholic social justice themes go. The activity involves looking at what the concept is and matching it with where it came from. How did we get this concept? And how old is it? How long has it been in our church tradition? And why are we not familiar with this? And where would we go to find the original thought, the original papal encyclical or original document that gave us this idea? So like I said, that's an activity that you can all do in your groups, in that type of thing. So what we talked about here was kind of titling this with a provocative question: am I my brother's keeper? Am I responsible for my brother? Am I my brother's keeper? And where does that come from? We're going to talk about social justice, and we need to take a look at kind of like what does that mean? What are the components of that? It's very often talked about that this kind of idea breaks into two components or two parts, and that is social service, or sometimes we label that as charity, the actual things that we do directly for people in need of all kinds. And I'm sure you can think of 1,000 examples of people in need, people that don't have shelter, people that don't have food, people that don't have medical services, whatever the need is. There are lots of things that we as church or community do for people in need. When we have plenty, we share it with other people, correct? We do that in a million ways all the time. Sometimes we write a check and we send the check off. So that type of thing might also be called charity. I mean, it's kind of the things that we do that we consider charity, that we give to others. The other component of social justice is looking at the root causes, looking at the underlying causes for why these things occur in our community. Why are there these needs in our community? And we take a look at how do we solve the whole problem. And that's more of social action. And that comes in a lot of different forms that we'll talk about. Social action. What can we do to make this situation better? There are, again, just kind of looking through some of the things, some of the sources. There are aspects to social justice. When we talk about social justice as a theme, there are aspects to it. One is solidarity, and not to be confused with the actual themes themselves, but the whole notion or idea of social justice. Solidarity, or walking with our brothers and sisters, being one with them. Examples of solidarity would be when we all decide that we are going to fast for a cause, or we all decide that we're going to pray for a cause, and walk with people who need our help. So praying, fasting, or living a simpler life. Maybe giving up something to live a simpler life. Another component of social justice is education. How do we learn these things? How do we learn about them in school, in church, in religious education, in our community? How do we talk about these things to other people? How do we learn about them in higher education? How do we find out what the issues are, and how to solve problems? How do we learn? How are these ideas delivered to us? That's one aspect. Another aspect is community organizing. There's a lot of things we can do as individuals. A lot of one-on-one help we can give to our brothers and sisters. A lot of things we can do ourselves. But much more we can do by organizing as a group and having a voice together that says, you know, this is wrong, we have to fix this. This is not right, we have to fix this. So any kind of community organizing, organized groups, like Habitat for Humanity kinds of things, or in our communities, housing partnerships, or groups that take care of social issues like that. And the fourth one is advocacy. How do we share our voice and our strength for those who maybe don't have a voice? How do we help bring attention to an issue or a problem for those who don't have a voice? Examples of advocacy would be organizations that focus on focus on bringing attention to Bread for the World is one of them. There's a Bread for the World chapter in Columbus. It's very active in our church, and mostly they advocate on food issues. So if there are people hungry in our community, our county, our state, our nation, or around the world, Bread for the World organizes information and people in the direction of, let's call our legislators and say, if they hear this enough times, that, you know, there are needs, and we don't want you to eliminate assistance, or we don't want you to eliminate programs or help. It's that kind of advocacy, in whatever way that you feel is right. We're going to talk about some themes of social justice. There are several different themes, different key points of social justice. If I have time and I haven't talked all the way over it, one of the 7 themes is something that I'm very involved in, very interested in, and that is sustainability and the environment and climate change and those types of issues. So there's a Catholic coalition on climate change, and we're doing some things in our parish regarding St. Francis Pledge, and how can we as individuals or as a group or as a church have an impact on this huge, complicated, interconnected problem of what we're doing to the environment. And what can we support locally for that? Go ahead and hand those out so everybody will have something to follow. This handout is simply a copy of a bulletin insert from the bishops regarding responsible citizenship and how we take a look at how we vote and how we advocate. I mean, as individuals in our own way, how do we take a look at how our voice and our vote and the things that we do affect others. How do we effectively do that? But it does summarize the 7 Catholic social justice themes very briefly. And I'm gonna kind of introduce each of those themes, and I want to kind of engage in a dialogue about what are some of the issues surrounding these themes, and how do we handle it. Let me start with a background here. This elicited a little bit of a reaction from Teresa. This is something that many people would probably only in antique stores understand what this document is. This is a Baltimore catechism. Drew, do you remember? Well, no. Okay. Anybody personally? This is my Baltimore catechism from my childhood. Okay. So Baltimore catechism is. Why do I still have this? I don't know. But it's in my foyer. I proudly display. Baltimore catechism is a summary of it was our educational tool growing up as children. Is that a fair assessment? Is everything you needed to know was in here. When I was growing up, Catholics really didn't, I mean, by and large, we didn't read the Bible. We didn't go directly to the scripture because we had Bartholomew Catechism, which summarized it for us very effectively. Large print, lots of illustrations in just 100 and some 150 pages. So, from the kind of table of contents or the overview of the catechism, here's what we needed to know. Catholic prayers, we needed to know all the Catholic prayers. The prayers of the day, the prayers of the night, the faithful contrition, for the Holy Queen. We needed to know the mysteries of the Rosary. We needed to know how to say the Rosary. There's a section on the Creed. We had to know the 10 Commandments, right? 10 Commandments. And all the sacraments. So we had to memorize all the sacraments. We memorized what was in this book, and then when we were confirmed, we were questioned on this, we repeated it back, and then we were confirmed. Right? End of story. When I was growing up, we were confirmed at a relatively young age compared to young people today. So there wasn't really a whole lot of questioning going on. You know, you're like 12. And you just memorize this, and you repeat it back, and you're confirmed in the Catholic faith. And there just wasn't the level of inquiry and questioning and thinking about it that I see today. That's very refreshing. So when we talk about, I mean, this is one of many books called Catholic Social Teaching, Our Best Kept Secret. So the secret is that there's actually a foundation of social justice. There's actually a foundation, a very long tradition, and a foundation of justice in our faith that is spelled out that very few people know about in those terms. Very few people know or can recite. You can recite the 10 Commandments, right? Pretty much. But pretty much not very many people can recite the social justice teaching that binds us together from the beginning. The basis of social justice teachings are where? I mean, I showed you a timeline that started in the 1800s, but where's the foundation of social justice? How old do you think that tradition is? Yeah, in Jesus' time, in the Gospels, even before the New Testament. I mean, looking at kind of how we treat each other and the value of each human life and how we take care of each other is a long standing tradition. So the foundation for this goes way back. It's an essential element of our faith. Its roots go back to the Hebrew prophets, back to Old Testament readings about, and then much of it is founded on the life and words of Jesus, who came to bring glad tidings to the poor, liberty to captives, recovery of sight to the blind. And he identified himself with the least of us. He identified himself in his time with the least of our brothers and sisters. So the tradition goes way back. It's nothing new. It's something that we celebrate, in the Eucharist all the time. The actual themes of Catholic social justice, when you boil it down to the 7 themes, or sometimes you see 10 themes. You see it worded differently. 7 themes of Catholic social justice. Those actual themes have come about over time through a number of documents. They're through either papal encyclicals, or they are papers that the bishops have come out with in response to issues of our time. So framework of this does not change, but the issues are always coming to the surface and pushing things around and causing us to go back to the foundation and say, what is it we believe? Something new comes up and we don't know how to approach it or how to deal with it. What is our framework? I mean, do we have a framework we can go back to? Ten Commandments, of course, but these 7 social justice things. So they are very, very briefly summarized on the handout we have. So we'll get to them. The very first one is titled, and then again you may see these titled in different ways, but they're very similar. On the back side, and I mean they are briefly summarized on that handout. The very first one is that really a lot of other things flow out from life and dignity of the human person. So, I mean, I think that one's pretty obvious, but life and dignity of the human person. So human beings in all forms, in all abilities, of all races, from what? I mean, in what context? The dignity of the human being. Right, exactly. Exactly. So this is this one's number one, and it's fundamental. That it's not just us human beings here at the CB that have the ability to come out and have a good time, and we're mobile. We have ability to do things. We have ability to vote. We're allowed to vote. We have rights. It's not just us, but all human beings, all human life is of value. So there are a number of issues that circulate under that theme, correct, in social justice. Like what kinds of things? What kinds of things? I run a project-based learning classroom, so I don't do all the talking. Euthanasia. Anything dealing with human life, shortening human life by any means, or any kind of threat to human life, or human dignity. Euthanasia is a good one. Death penalty, abortion, of course. All kinds of issues that can be looked at in the context or the framework of what God had in mind was that all human life had value, right? He didn't make exceptions or choose one human life over the other. The idea was that we were all created in His image. We all had dignity. And I don't mean to move on. You're all being quiet so far, so let's see if I can stir up some controversy here. I'm sure we can as we go along, but the next one on the list in this publication from the bishops might be slightly different on yours. Call to family, community, and participation. So this theme centers on the idea, not only the dignity of human life, but our rights to participate in family, in society, and in community. That the idea of community and forming community and family and social justice is a foundation of our faith. That we all have that right as just people. When we make decisions and when we participate in a group, everybody's opinion and participation is valuable, right? Not just the voice even though these themes are really the themes and the responsibilities that they carry for all of us go back hundreds of years, thousands of years, society kind of is always bumping against these things, right? What is one thing? Let's see if I can get you to say this. I don't know. I mean, what is one thing about our society today that's very prevalent? Well, I wasn't thinking of that's a good one. I wasn't thinking of an issue like that necessarily, but as people, what do we tend to focus on? Yeah, individual rights and individual, what can you do for me and how can I get ahead of everybody else? That has changed quite a bit even in my lifetime, and I'm sure in your lifetime. That, you know, I mean, well, you're not supposed to be, okay, but, you know, but this thing has really become quite a bit different than it was even really post-World War II, 40s, 50s. I think in the 60s this started to change, in the 70s definitely, and we've arrived at a place where we're really more interested in what can be done for me than what can be done for others. It's a me generation. So this kind of theme of social justice calls for us to remember that everybody has a right to participate in society, not just be chosen. Everybody has a right. And please interrupt if you have a question or a comment or whatever. Otherwise, I will move along to the next one, which is called Rights and Responsibilities. Yes, sir?
Well, we usually have to go back to the family. What we did, and many families back in the 60s and all, that we would pray the rosary after dinner. And the group of the family would get together, pray the rosary, we would kneel if we could, and pray the rosary. And I think that's lacking today.
Well, there's several things in that sentence that are lacking, and that is sitting down to dinner as a family and not having people go in 40 different directions, way too busy to even connect.
We say the rosary at 7 o'clock. We have a certain time we say the rosary.
Right. Very true, very true. So the next one is a heading called Rights and Responsibilities. So we know, and sometimes this has to be forced by government intervention, when it probably should be something more natural. But people have rights, right? We all have rights that are in this country, in this state, in this community. We have rights that are guaranteed to us under our Constitution, under our laws. We have kind of bigger than our government. We kind of have rights as human beings. But what comes with rights? I heard it. Responsibilities, right. So we do have certain inalienable rights. We have rights that are granted to us by government. We have rights as human beings. We have kind of like natural rights as human beings. But with that also comes a set of responsibilities to make sure that everybody is enjoying those same rights. So we have responsibility to more than ourselves. Kind of goes along a little bit with the last thing. We have responsibility to more than ourselves. We have responsibility as a society, as a group, as a community, as a church, as a faith group. We have also responsibilities to each other. Help each other in times of need, to make sure that nobody's getting left behind. So with rights comes responsibilities. This one slightly different way. Anybody have an idea, just from the brief description that you have on the page in front of you, what that means? Option for the poor. Be a quiz. Don't get answers. There'll be a quiz.
Putting them ahead of the others, I guess, is like when you're sorting out like priorities, you see, well, these people are in the greatest need. Like it's like the triage unit of your ER. These people are starving to death, so they need to be given the first dibs on this versus well, this person just doesn't have whatever. These people don't have clean water. That's kind of essential to life. I feel like they take it as the most the greatest need.
Great analogy, like a triage unit in the hospital. Focusing your resources and your time and your talent and your treasure on those in greatest need. That's a really tough one. I mean, as a society, don't you think we're kind of pretty selfish sometimes? I mean, we really want to make sure that we're not only taken care of, but maybe more than well taken care of before. Option for the poor and vulnerable means that we don't just get rid of the scraps on our table. This is something that's really important. It's often, I think, kind of a little bit unsettling or shocking when we realize that this is a foundation of our faith. That we not only need to take care of those who are vulnerable, we need to make that a priority. Taking care of people who are vulnerable, who are in need, who are poor, who don't have as much. There's a great deal in scriptural history, going back even to the Old Testament, about types of things like every so many years wiping out everybody's debt. Or in modern times, you might think of it as the type of thing where they're forgiving debt to some of the third world countries. You know, just a year of forgiving debt and giving them an even playing field to build on. It's not an easy concept to embrace, but it is part of our foundation that this is not just an afterthought that we do when we're satisfied, when we have more than enough. Don't we have more? We have more than enough, right? I mean, we have plenty, more than enough. And then maybe we'll think about the poor and vulnerable. Our teachings tell us that this should be part of our fabric. That it should be woven into everything we do. Okay. I was waiting for it.
I think our society is very concerned about the poor and vulnerable. And certainly, if you were to simply survey public opinion, you would find that I think where people within our society disagree about how to handle it, or whether we are doing a good job of handling it, becomes clear. It could be that it is already woven into our society, in that a certain type of economic order actually naturally does some things for the other, is other regarded in its very nature. I believe a free market society is that. Not necessarily ordered from the top down to be directed toward the poor, aimed at the poor, and simply being in other regard economic order. It at least has the potential to care for the poor as well as everyone else. You probably don't think that way. I think that it is built up. That is the integral part of the economic order that we are supposed to. You can look around society and you can find plenty of apples. You can point here and there. You can find pockets of apples. No question. You can find pockets of any other evil that we are
this way, I think it gives us a lens to make our own judgments. I think individually we do a lot. As a community, I think we do a lot. When there's somebody in need, I think we do a lot to come to the aid of those in need. As a state, as a nation, internationally, I think we do a lot. We're not ignoring it. I think we do a lot. And yet, there are, I don't have the statistics, yet there are people in our community around the world that starve to death every day. So how is that equitable?
That may or may not be it. That is a position.
Right.
I guess what I'm not saying is the simple existence of poverty is not itself evidence of a lack of concern for But I touched on a couple of things that you can concern. I brought this up in Sunday schools. The U.S. officials don't all believe their particular list of indices. Well, I believe often happens so as a principle of subsidiarity.
I've seen it in other lists.
Yeah, my understanding is, you mentioned there's sometimes a list of 10, maybe a list of 12, a list of 7. My understanding is that the various national conferences of bishops have their own list of indices. And U.S. bishops seem to simply left it out, or more or less incorporated into family community participation and other categories. We're calling that subsidiarity, in which different actors within society have to have their roles respected. That means from the individual churches, all those voluntary organizations that you mentioned earlier. That's aside from all various government structures, local and state. Each of those has its sphere of responsibility. Subsidiarity, as I read the documents I have access to, teaches that all those are respected so that each of those can fulfill its function.
I'm going to go ahead and take the pork chop.
The lowest level society has to be respected by the higher level society. And so this is why I'm saying, with regard to these intermediary organizations that are not government, they're not individual leaders, they're individual government, the institutions of civil society. Those are to be allowed to flourish. So I would say it does family community participation gets their quite full expression of it. And through that, I think you'll have a religious opportunity to really fulfill the vision of social justice. Even if poverty still exists, it's through those that we most often get off the board and fulfill these other rights and responsibilities and duties. I'd like to hear more about that, particularly in the U.S. bishops. It seems that it's more than where I've been in the bishops. Yeah, I'm going to shut up.
My question is not about
project goes somewhere and you don't see the results, or you're not sure that what you're doing is effective.
Also hard to think about the others. Just like hunger here is like good at your hunger. Like the things that we consider poverty here, we like like 10 times as much poverty here we consider poverty. So that's another thing I struggle with. Like, when you're living so far away.
I say like in general, if you have an opportunity to do something yourself, like interact with someone, like there has a chance to serve at the community Christmas dinner, that's a perfect opportunity to go and be Christ to your neighbor, and to not just like throw money in people's faces and be like, oh, I did my part. That's the easy way out. It's far more difficult to sit down and share a meal with a stranger who maybe looks different than you or has some mental issues or smells funny because they have bathed lately. No, like this is real stuff. And to see that person is Christ and to love them for who they are and not turn away from them because they have something that is repulsive to you about them. Like that's something like that's, you know, preferential option for the poor. That's what Jesus wants us to do when he calls us to love our neighbor. And so if you have a chance to be involved in something that allows you to associate with people, like we talked about, $1 and this person on the street, why don't you invite them to lunch and go eat with them instead? Because then you know that what you're giving to them monetarily is serving to feed their body versus, like, don't be afraid of that. It's so going out of your comfort zone, but it's much more like real.
What I like my aunt does is she carries food in her bag, so when people ask her,
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Because if they're really in need, they're going to thank you. And if they're looking for drug money,
Yeah, I and it's, I don't, for most of us, I think we're so far removed from these concepts. Many of us haven't seen these. You know, I've had people tell me that there are no homeless people in Columbus. There's nobody in Columbus that goes to bed on buildings because we're Columbus. And that's totally not true. I mean, you know that's not true. If you think about it, it's not true. And I think also it's real easy to think about how serious these problems are and how complicated they are and how universal they are all over the world and how deep some of these problems go. It's real easy to look at that and say, I can't do anything. You know, as one individual or as one small group or as one small family, I can't do anything. Where in truth you can. I mean, in truth you can. And that's a really good example. And I find that the dinner, I mean, I'm not just saying the dinner because, you know, I want you all to volunteer. I'm just saying that this is a group of people that part of the requirement for this group of people is they are willing to work on their own behalf. They're willing, they have to be willing to change their lifestyle and work on their own behalf and learn how to budget, learn how to pay their bills, learn how to save money for future goals. But in the meantime, they need a little, you know, they need a little help. They're in a program where they need a little help. So you get to directly see, you know, families and young children, people who are working. They're not on the street begging for $1. They're probably working 2 or 3 jobs to keep their family going, and they still can't do it, you know, because of the costs involved. So that's rewarding to, you know, to do it one-on-one. That's the way. Yeah, but let's just hit the high points in the interest of time, because all of these stir up all kinds of issues about this doesn't give you a roadmap or the answers of how to solve these problems. I mean, there are all kinds of issues and controversies that come up regarding gay marriage, regarding abortion, regarding just the environment. You know, almost been. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. The last three, just to define the last three: the dignity of work and the rights of workers. So, kind of the ability of people to have meaningful work, kind of the right of individuals to have meaningful work, to engage themselves in meaningful work, and to not be taken total advantage of, to have, you know, fair pay for meaningful work. Yes.
I'll let you finish the other two, but that one, I agree for it, given the political spirit of it, and that's conflicting with possibly your other option. Finish that, and I'll come back to that.
Okay. So dignity of work and the rights of workers, marketplace economy. You know, there are lots of situations everywhere that you can point to where the bottom line, the amount of money that a company makes, a corporation makes, individuals make, trumps the right of people to have fair labor practices. I mean, you know of all kinds of, these problems are not simple, they're very complicated. They're very multi-layered and they're not simple to solve. But child labor laws, having people work in very unsafe conditions, because we want a cheaper pair of socks and lawn. You know, that is, you have to think of those kinds of things and how they guide your choices that you make, not only in what you purchase and how you operate in the economy, but how you vote and how you help the economy as well. Solidarity is one that we talked about early on as being one of the main themes, and that is kind of the concept of thinking of us as one human family without barriers, without boundaries, that we're kind of all in this together, and when one of us is hurting, all of us are hurting. So a family extended to a global family. And then the last one, which I could have spent the whole evening on, the one that I probably focus on more than anything else, is care of God's creation. The ideas of how we are impacting our environment, how we are allocating our resources. We have renewable resources, but we also have resources that are finite. And how are they being allocated and distributed to all of our brothers and sisters on the planet? Are we being a little selfish with some things and using up too much of something at the expense of something else? Are we looking at it in a way that is fair? And that one is, there are no easy answers on that one. That's a very complex kind of issue. We should look at it as if, you know, the earth and all the people on it and the resources we have were given to us to be stewards of, to watch over, to have plenty for everybody. It wasn't really meant for some people to have a corner on all the resources without regard for how other people are using it. So in that regard, there are a number of things that can be done on local, statewide, national, and international level, just in terms of our conservation of resources, our recycling, our kind of our consumerism, our consumer attitudes, on how much we buy, how much we need, how much we throw away. All of those things impact kind of, you know, life on our planet and, you know, things that you hear about all the time. And it's alarming. I mean, when you hear about this in the news and media, in the things that you read, it's alarming. Carbon footprint, climate change, global warming. It's it sounds hopeless, and it's another situation where it's real easy to feel like as an individual we can't do it. There's nothing we can do. Where there are a lot of small things that we can that we can talk about in 2 days.
Yeah.
But not now.
You'll have to find Janet a coffee and donuts or something to start a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. You got my favorite topic there, just on small. One of the things we're doing at St. Bartholomew is pretty subtle. I don't know how well marketed or how well aware people are, is there are several religious-based, Catholic-based, environmental sustainability kind of organizations that are advocating all kinds of things in regard to the environment. One of the things that we are participating in is Catholic Covenant on Climate Change and Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, kind of a series of small actions revolving around the St. Francis pledge. This was all in the works before we got a Pope named Francis, who was basing his ministry on St. Francis, who was very much an advocate for the environment and life on Earth. The St. Francis pledge is a series of small things we can all do, like turn our thermostat down a couple degrees. Go without meat for a day. I could talk for like 6 days on what impact that would have. I mean, the impact that you would not think connects together. Just small actions that we can take to make sure that we have over. Okay. I'll be around if anybody wants to chat, if anybody has questions for the whole group, or yes.
Yeah. Honestly, these kids can transcend anything that we'll have to find. Given the polarization of the party record, I can see where, unfortunately, some of these kids are contradicting. Like say, I'm going to try to use the negative, participating and being an advocate for say, babies or being anti-abortion.
Right.
Okay, that puts you in one group.
Right.
And
Labels you.
Yeah.
Right.
And then say, I want to be for solidarity, right for, I think, pretty much for union stuff. So that throws you in another one where you're kind of like, okay, I'm trying to, participate in these things, and now it's contradiction, via the architect or brain.
Right.
So, is there any guidance for what you can do for that?
I think that all of these issues are extremely complex, and any single one of them, name any one of them, could be discussed forever, as far as what the best answer is. But you're right, there's a polarizing influence where instead of being able to have a number of different views on different things, you are either liberal or conservative, or you are black or white, or you are, you're pro-life or you're pro-choice. It's not that simple usually, and not that cut and dry. It's much more complex than that. I think as people of faith, we have a responsibility to understand the issues and vote our conscience. And if we look back on the framework of our faith, that might not mean the same thing for me as it does for you or it does for you. It might not be the same answer, but we have a responsibility to investigate and make a
take that away from them, then you're damaging them. And this is incorrect. The church teaches it wrong. So the reality is, they're not opposed to each other. If we're pro-life, pro-family, and everything is one, that is never in contradiction to supporting the poor. Now, as I said, society is created out of, or I don't know if you say society is created, but somehow it's come about with these ideas that the poor need certain things that the church teaches is immoral. And so it doesn't make sense to say it doesn't make sense to place ideas of helping the poor and being polite at odds with each other. They're never in contradiction to each other. It's a kind of socially made construction that is incorrect, that makes it look like it. And so, like, I remember when Obama was running for president, he claimed that he was pro-life because he was going to increase the social, or not the social, but the economic level of poor people so much that they don't need abortion anymore. That was one of the things he ran on. A lot of Catholics voted for him based on it. But he was going to still, promote and further abortion in these things and say, yeah, that's good because they need it. And it's our job to make them not poor anymore so that they don't need it. Does that make sense? Do you see how it's kind of like this bizarre, convoluted? Yeah. So the reality is it's not true.
I just said how we're fitted to get, like, because of humor and become fitted. I agree that that's why I said transcends. These things transcend. I'm just saying that interesting position we're in.
Yeah, it's hard. It makes it really hard to devote your conscience because no matter who you pick, they're not going to embody all that you know that you need.
Yeah.
And so then you
And
have
intentionally so.
Yeah.
Intentionally, it's going to,
You have to take up the reins and be continually involved in contacting the people you voted for or who you didn't vote for but are in office to make sure that what we believe as Catholics is being supported by our government to the degree that is possible.
And social justice, I mean, this is kind of really the bottom line of this whole thing. Social justice is the part of us that wants to take a look at not just giving money to the poor, that's charity, but looking at the root causes, looking at the causes behind it. So issues like, issues like abortion, they're very heated, they're very controversial. Everybody has an opinion one way or another, legal, illegal, but at the same time, we cannot ignore the conditions that cause people to seek that as an alternative. It's not that it's going to solve that whole problem, that it's going to erase the issue, but also you can't at the same time, it just doesn't work at the same time to have it both ways. To not provide services and provide prenatal care and provide things that people need and tell them they can't have abortion. It's like it's on horns. So social justice, we all have an individual answer for ourselves that is between us and God and teachings that we've been brought up with, that we believe in. But social justice is that element that tells us we have to look beyond the simple answer and find the causes, find where the injustice is and why it is the way it is in order to solve anything. Okay?
But I think another important thing is right here on the first page says Catholics are not single issue voters. And I think out of everything we're talking about is that it's not like you can pick one out of these and focus on that. It's like all these are interconnected. Our family and how we treat the poor are not two different things. They're the same. That's how we have to approach that.
benevolence, they all support each other, but one.
Yeah, that paragraph is interesting. As candidates, we are not single issue politics. A candidate's position on a single issue is not sufficient to merit the public. Yet, a candidate's position on a single issue that involves an intrinsic evil, such as support for legal abortion or the promotion of racism, may legitimately lead the voters to disqualify the candidate.
If there's not a candidate that,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that's the thing you have to keep in mind is, you know, there has to be someone, you just can't vote against something, you have to vote for something.
Bottom
There are only
line,
two choices, right?
bottom line, go talk to Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament.
Thank you.
You have the opportunity to abstain from voting on that. Have a guilty conscience over both candidates. And that is a viable option in the church tonight as well. If you feel morally obligated not to vote for them, don't vote at all.
And I want to offer something off of the document that I was referring to that I read about social justice issues. I have on a thumb drive, and I have 4 other copies of it that I'm going to give away for free. It's called The Social Agenda. Some years ago.
Well, I was gonna say, it's like I can, get it to my number.
It's,
And I already have one. And I already have it.
she's got it.
I've got it. On my hard
It's
drive.
published by the Pontifical Institute for Peace and Justice in 2000. If you want me to have it, find funny stuff on it. It's not much weird stuff like that. It's just the duly obvious.
Not to say that other people can't take them too.
Yes.
But you can,
Yeah.
if more than 4 people are interested,
Right.
you can get it.
Order up. All right.
Thank you.
So, I'm sure that we can continue. You go ahead. But yeah, for now, let's conclude that.
Katie would tell you that that's typical of my lectures. You're lucky to be.
As long as you guys don't care, I so. All right. Before I quit, everybody.
Really, considering the situation as it really is, really good. I like to reach the conclusion, I think, really is the right conclusion in that situation. You understand how the world really is, conforming your actions to the way